I confronted a woman in a handicapped spot. Now I'm fighting a felony charge. The detective slid the arrest warrant across the metal table, and I read my name next to the words aggravated assault and attempted kidnapping. My hands went numb. I'd been sitting in this interrogation room for 3 hours, and Detective Raymond Kowalski, 22 years on the force, according to the plaque behind him, still hadn't let me explain what actually happened in that parking lot. You grabbed her, he said, tapping the paper. Multiple witnesses saw you put your hands on Vanessa Whitmore. She has bruises, photographs, and a dozen people ready to testify. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. 6 days ago, I'd been a financial analyst with a clean record and a quiet life. Now I was staring at 5 to 15 years because I'd asked a woman to move her car. That's it. That's all I did. I asked her to move her BMW from the handicapped spot she'd parked in, while my mother, who actually needs that space, waited in my passenger seat with her walker. But Vanessa Whitmore is beautiful, articulate, and white. I'm a 6'2" black man with a deep voice. And in the court of public opinion, I'd already lost. I'd been taking my mother to her physical therapy appointments every Thursday for 8 months. She'd had a hip replacement the previous summer, and while she was recovering well, walking any real distance still caused her pain. We had a placard, legitimate, state-issued, hanging from my rearview mirror. That morning, October 19th, started normally. I picked Mom up at 9:15, drove the 30 minutes to the rehabilitation center, and pulled into the parking lot at 9:50. There were 3 handicapped spaces near the entrance. 2 were occupied by vehicles with proper placards displayed. The third had a gleaming silver BMW 5 Series parked dead center, no placard visible anywhere. I circled the lot twice. Every other space was at least 100 yards from the door. Mom looked at the BMW, then at me. "It's fine, baby," she said. "I can walk." But I could hear the resignation in her voice. She'd been dealing with this her whole life, people taking what wasn't theirs, expecting her to just accept it. I put the car in park directly behind the BMW, blocking it in. "Wait here," I said. "I'll be quick." The woman was inside the rehabilitation center, standing at the reception desk, chatting with the staff. I recognized her immediately. Vanessa Whitmore, local real estate agent whose face was on bus benches and billboards across the city. Mid-30s, blonde, yoga fit, wearing athleisure that probably cost more than my car payment. She was laughing at something the receptionist said, completely at ease. I approached calmly. "I'm 6'2" and 220 pounds, and I've learned to make myself smaller in public spaces." I kept my hands visible, my voice even. "Excuse me," I said. "Are you the owner of the silver BMW in the handicapped spot?" She turned, sized me up in a glance, and her smile didn't waver. "Yes. Why?" No apology, no acknowledgement, just bored curiosity. "You're parked in a handicapped space without a placard," I said. "My mother has mobility issues and needs that spot. Would you mind moving your car?" The receptionist's eyes went wide. Vanessa's smile thinned. "I'll just be a minute," she said, turning back to the desk. "I need that spot now," I said. "My mother is waiting." That's when her expression changed. The pleasant mask cracked, and underneath was pure contempt. "Are you seriously harassing me right now?" she said, loud enough that everyone in the waiting room looked up. "I said I'll move when I'm done." I should have walked away. That's what the lawyer I can't afford would tell me later. I should have taken Mom to another entrance, filed a complaint with the building management, let it go. But I was tired. Tired of watching people take advantage, tired of watching my mother struggle while entitled strangers treated accessibility like a convenience. "You don't get to decide when you're done breaking the law," I said. My voice was still calm, but I felt my jaw tighten. "Move your car now, or I'm calling parking enforcement." She stepped closer to me, not away, toward, and I instinctively stepped back. She noticed. Her eyes gleamed. "You're threatening me," she said. "Everyone here just heard you threaten me." The receptionist reached for the phone. I raised my hands, palms out. "I'm not threatening anyone. I'm asking you to follow the law and move your vehicle from a handicapped parking space." Vanessa pulled out her phone and started recording. "This man is harassing me," she said into the camera, her voice shaking in a way it hadn't been seconds before. "He followed me inside. He's yelling at me, and I feel unsafe." I looked around the waiting room. 12 people stared back at me. Not one of them had seen the parking lot. Not one of them knew my mother was sitting outside. All they saw was a large black man and a frightened-looking white woman with a phone. I left. I walked out of that building with my hands shaking and my heart slamming against my ribs, knowing I'd just been set up but having no idea how bad it would get. Mom was still in the car, watching through the windshield. I got behind the wheel and just sat there for a minute, trying to steady my breathing. "What happened?" she asked. "Nothing," I said. "She's not moving. We'll use the other entrance." We parked in a regular spot, 200 feet from the door. I helped Mom out, got her walker from the trunk, and walked slowly beside her as she made her way across the parking lot. It took us 8 minutes to reach the building. By the time we got inside, Vanessa's BMW was gone. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. So incredibly wrong. That night, my phone started blowing up. Text messages from numbers I didn't recognize. Emails. A friend from college sent me a link with 3 words. Dude, is this you? It was a video on Facebook. 23,000 shares. Vanessa Whitmore, sitting in her car, makeup slightly smudged, crying into the camera about the aggressive man who'd cornered her in the parking lot, who'd put his hands near her and blocked her from leaving. The comments were exactly what you'd expect. Hundreds of strangers calling for my arrest, my firing, my death. Someone had identified me, my full name, my employer, my social media profiles, all public within 6 hours. The video was a masterpiece of manipulation. She never technically lied. She said I'd confronted her, which was true. She said I'd blocked her car, which was true. She said she felt threatened, which I couldn't disprove. What she didn't mention was why I'd confronted her, or that she'd been parked illegally, or that she'd escalated the situation by accusing me of harassment when I'd asked a simple question. She just cried, and the internet did the rest. By morning, the story had been picked up by local news. Real estate agent threatened by stranger in parking lot confrontation. My employer called me at 7 a.m. Deborah Franklin, senior HR director, 15 years with the company. Her voice was professional but strained. We've received numerous complaints about an incident involving you, she said. We're going to need you to take a few days of administrative leave while we investigate. I tried to explain. She cut me off. This is standard procedure. We'll be in touch. I was put on leave from a job I'd held for 6 years because a woman parked illegally and then lied about what happened. I had no video, no witnesses, no proof of anything except my own memory and my mother's corroboration, and she hadn't seen the confrontation inside the building. I felt the ground dissolving beneath me. The police showed up on Saturday. 2 officers, both looking uncomfortable. They asked if I'd been at the Westfield Rehabilitation Center on the 19th. I said yes. They asked if I'd had contact with Vanessa Whitmore. I said yes. They asked me to come to the station to give a statement. I said I wanted a lawyer. That's when I knew how bad this was. They weren't asking about a parking dispute. They were investigating an assault. I called every lawyer I could find. Most were too expensive. Some wouldn't touch a case that had already gone viral. Finally, I found David Kim, a criminal defense attorney who'd handled similar cases. He met me at my apartment Sunday morning, listened to my story, and said the words I'll never forget. You need to prepare yourself for the possibility that the truth doesn't matter. He showed me Vanessa's official police report. She claimed I'd grabbed her arm when she tried to walk away, that I'd blocked her path, that I'd raised my voice and made threatening gestures. She had photographs of a bruise on her upper arm, small finger-shaped marks that could have come from anywhere or been self-inflicted. She had witness statements from people in the waiting room who'd heard me confronting her, and she had her video, which had now been viewed over 1 million times, shared by activists and advocacy groups as an example of male aggression and racial intimidation. The next escalation came from my employer. They fired me. Not suspended. Fired. Effective immediately. The official reason was conduct unbecoming and violation of company values. The real reason was that keeping me employed was bad publicity. They couldn't afford to be associated with the man from the viral video, regardless of what had actually happened. I'd been making $78,000 a year. I had a mortgage, a car payment, student loans. I had 2 months of savings, maybe 3 if I stretched it. And I had legal bills that were about to bury me. David estimated my defense would cost at least $15,000, possibly more if this went to trial. I didn't have $15,000. I barely had $1,500. My mother offered to take out a loan against her house. I told her absolutely not, but I knew I might not have a choice. The police wanted me to come in for questioning again. David advised against it. Anything you say can and will be used against you, he said. Right now, they have her word and some questionable evidence. Don't give them ammunition. But the prosecutor's office was building a case. Assistant District Attorney Nicole Stevens, 8 years in the office, 94% conviction rate. She was young, ambitious, and this case had publicity written all over it. A week after the incident, I received notice that I was being charged with assault and battery, plus attempted unlawful restraint. Felony charges. If convicted, I was looking at up to 6 years in prison. The arraignment was surreal. I stood in a courtroom wearing the only suit I owned, listening to a prosecutor describe me as a violent predator who'd terrorized an innocent woman. Vanessa sat in the gallery, looking appropriately traumatized. The judge set bail at $10,000. I couldn't make it. David argued it down to 5, but I still couldn't make it. I spent 3 nights in county jail before my mother and my sister pooled their savings to bond me out. Those 3 nights taught me things I'll never forget. I learned what it feels like to be processed like livestock, stripped of your name and dignity, reduced to a number and a charge. I learned what it sounds like when men scream in their sleep. I learned that the presumption of innocence is a fantasy we tell ourselves to feel civilized. When I got out, my apartment had been vandalized. Someone had spray-painted rapist across my door. Management wanted me gone, but my lease gave me some protection. Instead, they installed security cameras and sent me a bill for cleaning the door. My neighbors stopped making eye contact. Parents pulled their children away when they saw me. I'd become the monster from the video, the threat Vanessa Whitmore had warned them about. The only person who believed me unconditionally was my mother. She'd been there in the car. She'd seen the BMW in the handicapped spot. She'd watched me walk into that building calmly and come out shaken. She knew her son, but her testimony wouldn't be enough. Family members are inherently biased, David explained. We needed independent corroboration. We needed evidence. We needed something to prove that Vanessa Whitmore was lying. I started investigating. I went back to the rehabilitation center and asked for security footage. They told me their cameras didn't cover the parking lot, only the entrances. I asked if anyone had dashcam footage from that morning. Nothing. I checked my own phone. I hadn't recorded anything because I'd never imagined I'd need to defend myself from false accusations. I was trapped in a nightmare where the only evidence was her word against mine, and the entire world had already decided who to believe. Then, 2 weeks after the incident, I got a call from someone I didn't expect. Her name was Aisha Thompson, and she'd been in the waiting room that day. She'd seen the confrontation, she'd seen Vanessa's performance, and she'd kept quiet because she was afraid of the backlash. But her conscience wouldn't let her sleep. I saw what happened, she told me. That woman was lying. You didn't touch her. You didn't even raise your voice. But when I saw what happened to you online, I got scared. I have kids. I can't have people coming after me. I understood. I couldn't be angry at someone for protecting themselves. But I asked her if she'd be willing to give a statement, to testify if it came to that. She agreed, reluctantly. It was the first break I'd had in 2 weeks. David took her statement. Aisha described the scene exactly as I remembered it. My calm approach, my polite request, Vanessa's dismissal, and then her sudden shift to playing victim when I persisted. She described how Vanessa had moved toward me, not away, how she'd started recording and immediately changed her demeanor, how everyone in the waiting room had reacted to Vanessa's performance without knowing the context. It was good. It helped. But it wasn't enough. One witness against the tide of public opinion and a prosecutor who'd already committed to the case. We needed more. I started digging into Vanessa Whitmore's background. I wasn't trying to smear her. I just wanted to know who I was dealing with. What I found surprised me. Vanessa had been involved in 2 previous incidents where she'd accused men of harassment. Both cases had been settled quietly, with no charges filed. One involved a contractor who'd supposedly made unwanted advances while working on her house. Another involved a former colleague at her real estate firm who she claimed had created a hostile work environment. In both cases, the men had faced professional consequences. The contractor lost clients. The colleague was fired. Neither had been able to prove their innocence, so they'd accepted settlements and signed NDAs. I wondered how many other men she'd destroyed with false accusations. If you are enjoying this story already, please subscribe to see more stories like this. David hired a private investigator, a retired cop named Leonard Walsh. Wait, Walsh is forbidden. Let me use a different name. David hired a private investigator, a retired cop named Leonard Burke, 30 years in law enforcement, now working private cases. Burke specialized in digging up dirt that prosecutors didn't want found. He started with Vanessa's social media, her business records, her litigation history. What he found was a pattern. Vanessa Whitmore had sued or threatened to sue more than a dozen people over the past 8 years. Clients who'd left bad reviews, neighbors who'd complained about her dogs, a yoga studio that had canceled her membership. She was litigious, aggressive, and very good at playing the victim when things didn't go her way. But that still didn't prove she was lying about what happened in the parking lot. We needed something concrete. The break came from an unexpected source. A woman named Jennifer Cole reached out to David's office. She'd seen the news coverage and recognized Vanessa immediately. 3 years earlier, Jennifer had been in a parking dispute with Vanessa at a shopping center. Vanessa had parked across 2 spaces, blocking Jennifer from accessing her car. Jennifer had knocked on Vanessa's window to ask her to move. Vanessa had called the police and claimed Jennifer had attacked her. The police reviewed the security footage, found that Vanessa was lying, and no charges were filed. But the experience had been traumatic enough that Jennifer never forgot Vanessa's face or her tactics. She had documentation, police reports, the security footage, everything. David immediately moved to introduce this as evidence of a pattern of false accusations. The prosecutor fought it. Nicole Stevens argued that prior incidents were irrelevant and prejudicial, that they couldn't be used to assassinate Vanessa's character. Judge Margaret Torres, 17 years on the bench, known for being meticulous and fair, ruled that the evidence was admissible. If the defense could establish a pattern of behavior, it went to credibility. That ruling changed everything. Suddenly, we weren't just defending against one accusation. We were exposing a serial false accuser. The media started to shift. Not completely. Plenty of people still believed Vanessa, but cracks began to appear. A few journalists started asking questions. Why had Vanessa been involved in so many disputes? Why did her version of events never quite match the evidence? Why had she been parked illegally in the first place? Then the parking lot surveillance question came up again. The rehabilitation center claimed they didn't have cameras covering the lot, but Burke kept digging. He discovered that the building next door, a medical office complex, had cameras that covered part of the shared parking area. He subpoenaed the footage. It took 3 weeks and a court order, but we finally got it. The video quality wasn't great. The angle didn't show the handicapped spaces directly, but it showed Vanessa's BMW pulling into the lot, circling past the handicapped section, and parking there. It showed my car arriving minutes later. It showed me getting out, checking the front of my vehicle, and walking toward the building. And it showed Vanessa leaving the building 12 minutes later, getting in her BMW, and driving away. The timestamp proved I'd been inside for less than 10 minutes, hardly enough time for the extended confrontation she'd described. More importantly, it showed that I'd blocked her car in, exactly as I'd said, which corroborated my version of events. But the most damning evidence came from Vanessa herself. Burke discovered that Vanessa had posted on a private Facebook group for real estate agents 2 hours after the incident. Someone in the group had leaked the screenshots to us. In the post, Vanessa described the encounter differently than she had in her police report or public video. She'd written, "Some guy called me out for parking in a handicapped spot today, and I totally played the victim card. Filmed him and everything. He looked so scared, LOL. People need to mind their own business." The post had been deleted, but the internet is forever. Multiple group members had screenshots. David filed a motion to introduce this as evidence. The prosecutor's office went ballistic. They argued the screenshots could be fake, that they were taken out of context, that the private group was irrelevant. Judge Torres ordered a digital forensics expert to verify the authenticity of the screenshots. Dr. Patricia Lynn, certified forensic examiner, 21 years of experience, analyzed the metadata and confirmed the screenshots were genuine and unaltered. Vanessa Whitmore had admitted to fabricating the entire incident, in writing, 2 hours after it happened. The case fell apart. Nicole Stevens tried to salvage it, arguing that the Facebook post was just Vanessa processing her emotions, that it didn't mean the assault didn't happen. But the judge wasn't buying it. Neither was the jury pool, once word got out. The public narrative shifted almost overnight. The news outlets that had run with Vanessa's story started issuing corrections, buried on page 6. The social media activists who'd called for my head went silent or doubled down, insisting that even if this particular case was questionable, it didn't invalidate the broader issue of male violence. Some people actually argued that I deserved what happened because I'd been aggressive in how I'd approached her. The mental gymnastics were astounding, but the damage was done. The prosecutor dropped the charges 3 days before trial. No apology, no acknowledgement that they'd nearly destroyed an innocent man's life. Just a terse statement about insufficient evidence to proceed. I was free, but I wasn't whole. I'd lost my job, my savings, my reputation. I'd spent 33 days thinking I was going to prison for asking someone to follow the law. I'd learned that justice is a luxury, not a right, and that the truth matters far less than who tells the story first. Vanessa Whitmore faced no consequences. She wasn't charged with filing a false report or perjury or anything else. David explained that prosecutors rarely go after false accusers because it might discourage real victims from coming forward. So Vanessa got to walk away, her real estate business intact, her social media following actually increased from the publicity. The only difference was that now some people knew what she was, but not enough people, not nearly enough. I tried to rebuild. I filed for unemployment and started job hunting, but no one wanted to hire the guy from the viral video, even with the charges dropped. Background checks pulled up news articles that hadn't been updated or corrected. HR departments didn't want the risk. I applied to 63 jobs over 4 months. I got 2 interviews. No offers. My savings evaporated. I fell behind on my mortgage. The bank started foreclosure proceedings. Mom offered again to help, but she was living on a fixed income, and I couldn't take what little she had. I sold my car to cover the legal bills that kept coming even after the case was dismissed. David had worked for a reduced rate, but I still owed him $9,000. I took rideshare jobs to make ends meet, driving strangers around the city in a borrowed vehicle, hoping none of them recognized me from the internet. Some did. Most said nothing. One guy recorded me and posted it online with the caption, "Update, false accuser victim now driving Uber." It went semi-viral. People debated in the comments whether I was a cautionary tale or deserved everything I got. Nobody asked if I was okay. Nobody cared that I was barely sleeping, that I jumped every time I saw a police car, that I developed anxiety so severe I couldn't go into public parking lots without my hands shaking. I saw 3 different therapists before I found one who specialized in trauma from false accusations. Dr. Raymond Harper, licensed clinical psychologist, 12 years in practice. He was the first person who didn't look at me with either pity or suspicion. He listened. He validated. He helped me understand that what I was experiencing wasn't weakness. It was a normal response to an abnormal situation. The civil lawsuit came next. David had advised me to consider it, but I'd been hesitant. Suing Vanessa Whitmore meant more legal bills, more time in court, more exposure. But I needed something, some acknowledgement that what she'd done was wrong, some compensation for what I'd lost. We filed in April, 7 months after the parking lot incident. The suit alleged defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and malicious prosecution. We asked for actual damages covering my lost wages, legal fees, and medical expenses, plus punitive damages for her deliberate misconduct. Vanessa's lawyers tried to get the case dismissed, arguing that her statements were protected speech and that she'd had a reasonable belief she was in danger. Judge Torres, the same judge who'd presided over the criminal case, denied the motion. The case would proceed. Discovery was brutal. Vanessa's legal team went after everything. my employment history, my relationship history, my financial records, my therapy sessions. They tried to paint me as someone with anger management issues, pointing to a college disciplinary incident where I'd gotten into an argument with a professor. They dug up every mistake I'd ever made and presented it as proof I was dangerous. Our team countered with Vanessa's history, every lawsuit, every complaint, every settlement. We found 6 more men who'd had similar experiences with her over the years, false accusations that had damaged their lives but never resulted in charges. Some agreed to testify. Others were too afraid. I understood. I'd have been afraid too if I weren't so angry. The deposition was surreal. I sat across from Vanessa Whitmore for the first time since the parking lot, separated by a conference table and a court reporter. She looked different, older, harder. Her lawyer, Gerald Hutchinson, senior partner at a downtown firm, had prepped her well. She was calm, collected, and stuck to her story with only minor adjustments to account for the evidence we'd uncovered. She claimed the Facebook post had been sarcasm, that she'd been trying to cope with trauma by making light of it. She claimed the bruise on her arm had come from me, even though the medical examiner who'd reviewed the photographs testified it was inconsistent with the type of contact she'd described. She maintained that she'd felt genuinely threatened, that my size and demeanor had made her fear for her safety. Her lawyer tried to turn it into a referendum on implicit bias and racial dynamics. They argued that as a white woman, Vanessa had every reason to be frightened of a large black man confronting her aggressively. They used my race as both a shield and a weapon, suggesting I was the real victim of racism because society was now skeptical of a white woman's tears, while simultaneously arguing that Vanessa's fear was justified because of racial stereotypes. The cognitive dissonance was staggering. David tore her apart on cross-examination. He walked her through every contradiction in her statements, every inconsistency between her police report and her video and her testimony. He showed her the Facebook post and asked her to explain, specifically, what was sarcastic about admitting she'd played the victim card. He introduced testimony from the other men she'd accused, establishing a clear pattern. He showed the parking lot surveillance footage and asked her to reconcile it with her claim that I'd prevented her from leaving for over 20 minutes. She couldn't. She stumbled, backtracked, and eventually admitted that some details might be unclear because she'd been so frightened. The trial lasted 8 days. The local news covered it sporadically, nothing like the feeding frenzy when I'd been accused. Public opinion remained split. Some people believed Vanessa had been genuinely scared and had every right to defend herself, even if she'd exaggerated some details. Others saw her as a liar who'd weaponized her privilege against an innocent man. The jury deliberated for 11 hours. When they came back, they found in my favor on all counts. The judgment was substantial: $230,000 in compensatory damages and $500,000 in punitive damages, $730,000 total. I cried when the verdict was read, not from relief or joy, but from exhaustion. 20 months of fighting, of proving my innocence, of watching my life disintegrate while everyone debated whether I deserved basic human dignity. The money would never be enough. Vanessa's legal team immediately filed an appeal. The judgment would be tied up in the courts for years, and even if it was upheld, collecting would be another battle. She'd already started transferring assets, hiding money, preparing to declare bankruptcy if necessary. But the verdict itself mattered. It was public, official acknowledgement that I'd been wronged, that she had lied, that the system, for once, had worked. The appeals court would eventually uphold the judgment, though they reduced the punitive damages to $300,000. Total award, $530,000. I'd collect about 40% of that over the next 3 years through wage garnishments and asset seizures. It wasn't justice, but it was something. The aftermath was complicated. Some news outlets ran stories about the verdict, framing it as a cautionary tale about false accusations. Others ignored it entirely or buried it in their archives. The viral video was still online, still being shared, still shaping people's perceptions. Comment sections remained toxic cesspools of debate about race, gender, privilege, and victimhood. I became a symbol, whether I wanted to be or not. Men's rights groups tried to recruit me. Advocacy organizations asked me to speak at events. Journalists wanted interviews. I declined most of it. I wasn't interested in becoming a poster child for any movement. I just wanted my life back. I got a job eventually, at a smaller firm that valued skills over Google results. The pay was less, $52,000 instead of $78,000, but it was stable. I moved to a different neighborhood, started over with people who didn't know my story. I kept seeing Dr. Harper, working through the trauma, learning to function in parking lots again. Mom's health stabilized. She never stopped believing in me, never doubted for a second that I'd done the right thing by asking that woman to move her car. She'd seen enough injustice in her 71 years to recognize it instantly. She taught me that doing the right thing doesn't guarantee the right outcome, but you do it anyway because that's what integrity means. Vanessa Whitmore's real estate business took a hit, but she survived. Some clients dropped her. Others didn't care or didn't believe the verdict. She rebranded, moved to a different city, started over. The internet has a short memory for everyone except the accused. She'll probably do fine. She'll probably accuse someone else eventually, and maybe next time she'll be more careful about what she posts online. But she'll never face criminal charges for what she did to me. The system doesn't work that way. I learned to live with that. Not forgive, I'll never forgive, but accept. Some people are just broken in ways that let them hurt others without remorse, and sometimes all you can do is survive them and warn the next person. I think about that parking lot every day. I think about the split-second decision to confront her instead of just moving on, and how that single choice cost me nearly 2 years of my life and most of my faith in humanity. Would I do it differently now? I don't know. Part of me says yes, absolutely. Let the entitled take what they want and keep your head down. But another part, the part my mother raised, says that you can't let injustice slide just because challenging it might cost you. That's how they win. That's how people like Vanessa Whitmore get to operate with impunity, collecting victims and moving on, knowing nobody will stop them because the price is too high. I wrote this all down because people ask me what happened. They've heard fragments, seen the videos, read the headlines. They want to know the truth, or at least my version of it. Here's what I want you to understand. This isn't a story about a parking spot. It's a story about how easily a life can be destroyed, how quickly a mob can form, how little evidence it takes to convict someone in the court of public opinion. It's about the intersection of privilege, race, gender, and the weaponization of victimhood. It's about a system that claims to value justice, but too often values convenience instead. And it's about the reality that sometimes, even when you win, you lose. I got my verdict. I got my money, some of it. I got my name cleared, at least in legal terms. But I lost 2 years, $70,000 in income, my career trajectory, my sense of security, and my ability to see a parking lot without feeling my chest tighten. I lost my belief that doing the right thing matters in any cosmic sense. The universe doesn't care about right and wrong. People do sometimes if it's convenient, and if the story is told the right way. But mostly, people care about being entertained, about picking sides, about feeling righteous without having to do anything righteous. They'll share a video without fact-checking it. They'll demand someone be fired without hearing their side. They'll move on to the next outrage before the truth comes out, leaving the accused to clean up the wreckage alone. So when people ask me what I learned, here's what I tell them. I learned that the truth is not enough. You need proof, documentation, witnesses, lawyers, money, time, and luck. You need the other person to slip up and leave evidence of their lies. You need a judge who cares about fairness and a prosecutor who's willing to admit mistakes. You need to survive long enough to see the system work, if it works at all. And even then, you'll never be fully whole again. I learned that parking lots are dangerous. Not because of the people who park illegally, they're everywhere, and they always will be, but because confronting them can cost you everything. I learned that my mother was right about a lot of things, but maybe wrong about one. Sometimes you can't fight every battle. Sometimes you have to let the entitled have their way, because the alternative is becoming collateral damage in a war you didn't choose. I learned that Vanessa Whitmore will never understand what she did to me, because people like her don't see other people as real. We're obstacles, inconveniences, tools to be used when necessary, and discarded when we've served our purpose. She'll tell her version of the story for the rest of her life, the one where she was victimized by an aggressive man and bravely stood up for herself. She'll believe it, because believing it is easier than facing what she actually is. The most important thing I learned is this. Everyone takes sides. That's what people do. They hear a story, pick a team, and defend their choice regardless of evidence. Some people sided with Vanessa because she's a white woman and I'm a black man, and that narrative fit their worldview. Others sided with me because they hate false accusers or because they've been through something similar. Very few people, very, very few, actually looked at the evidence objectively and changed their minds when new information emerged. Most just dug in deeper, found new ways to justify their initial reaction, attacked anyone who disagreed. The internet is a coliseum, and we're all just gladiators fighting for the entertainment of people who'll forget our names by tomorrow. I'm not bitter. I'm realistic. I know that somewhere, right now, someone is being falsely accused. Someone is watching their life implode because a lie went viral faster than the truth could catch up. Someone is sitting in an interrogation room, trying to explain something that shouldn't need explanation, realizing that innocence is not a defense. And somewhere else, someone is parking in a handicapped spot they don't deserve, taking what isn't theirs, confident that nobody will stop them because stopping them costs too much. The world is full of Vanessa Whitmores, and there aren't enough parking enforcement officers to ticket them all. I still drive my mother to physical therapy. Different location now, different parking lot. I don't confront people anymore. I see violations constantly. Able-bodied people sprinting from handicapped spots, luxury cars with no placards, people who park across the lines like the rules don't apply to them. I see it all, and I keep driving. I find another spot, even if it's farther. I help Mom walk the extra distance, even if it hurts her, because I learned my lesson. I learned that being right doesn't protect you, that justice is expensive, and that some battles aren't worth the cost. Mom doesn't say anything, but I can see the disappointment in her eyes sometimes. She raised me to stand up, to speak out, to call wrong by its name. But she also watched what happened when I did. She posted my bail, helped pay my legal bills, held my hand through the panic attacks. She knows what it cost, so she doesn't push. She just holds my arm as we walk those extra 100 yards, and we both pretend we don't see the BMW parked illegally by the door. That's the real ending to this story. Not the verdict, or the money, or the vindication. The ending is, that I stopped fighting. Vanessa Whitmore won in the way that matters most. She made me give up. She made me afraid. She made me realize that in a world where everyone takes sides, the side with the best story wins, and the truth is just another narrative to be spun or ignored. I survived her, but I didn't beat her. Nobody beats people like that. You just survive them, warn others when you can, and learn to live with the damage. If you're reading this and you've made it this far, I hope you're never in my position. I hope you never have to defend yourself against lies, never have to watch your life become entertainment for strangers, never have to learn that the system protects the convincing more than the truthful. But if you do end up there, if someone accuses you falsely, if the mob comes for you, if you find yourself fighting for your life against nothing more than someone's word, remember this. Document everything, trust no one, and lawyer up immediately. Don't think the truth will save you. Don't think being right matters. Get proof, get witnesses, get evidence, and fight like your life depends on it, because it does. And if you see someone parked in a handicapped spot without a placard, and your first instinct is to say something, think twice. Think about whether you can afford to be right. Because in this world, sometimes the cost of doing the right thing is higher than anyone should have to pay. I paid it. I'm still paying it. And I'm not sure I'd make the same choice again. That's what Vanessa Whitmore took from me. Not just my job or my money or my reputation, but my certainty that standing up for what's right is worth it. She took my conviction. And that's the real crime. The one she'll never answer for. The one the verdict couldn't address. She didn't just lie about what happened in that parking lot. She killed something fundamental in me. The belief that justice exists for everyone. It doesn't. It exists for people who can afford it, who have the resources to fight back, who get lucky with judges and juries and witnesses. For everyone else, there's just survival. And sometimes, survival means letting the Vanessa Whitmores of the world win. I wish I could end this with something uplifting, some message of hope or redemption. But that would be a lie, and I'm done with lies. The truth is that I'm tired, I'm damaged, and I'm not the person I was before that Thursday morning. The truth is that evil often goes unpunished, that doing the right thing can destroy you, and that the world is full of people who will believe the first story they hear and never look back. That's the lesson. That's what I learned in that parking lot. And I'm sharing it with you so that maybe, just maybe, one person will make a different choice than I did, will protect themselves instead of standing on principle, will survive instead of fighting. Because fighting is expensive, and I'm not convinced anyone wins in the end. Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to subscribe and like to not miss the next story.